Where and in what year were you born?
I was born in Poland. Kletsk is the name of the town, and close to the Russian border. I was born in 1920, November.
What was your childhood like?
I was going to a private kindergarten and a private public school. I played with the children of the town. It was a small town, and I played mostly with Jewish children. The population of the Jews was around 80%, I would say. Mostly Jewish children played outside. We didn't have toys, we didn't have playgrounds, but we played. We played with rods, we played with old jewelry, pots and pans, whatever we could find. We made make-believe toys. And we were even riding bicycles, but a bicycle is made out of one wheel with a stick. We didn't realize what's going on in the world. We were children. We had enough food to eat, sometimes less, but always contented and happy. If we had herring and potatoes, we were happy.
Where were you living when the war broke out?
I was living when the war broke out. At home with my parents. It was Friday morning, December 1st, when we heard the sirens going off. And we knew that something is happening, but we didn't know exactly what. And we had rumors that a war is starting, and it was. And the sirens didn't stop for a second. So we were scared, keeping close to the mother, close to the father, to guide us. And they asked us not to panic. It's gonna be okay. You'll be fine. Momentarily, the stores were closed. There was nothing you can buy to eat. If you wanted to buy food, you have to exchange for something with somebody, but you couldn't go to the store anymore because the stores were closed and people were hiding the food in basements, in cellars. So, because my father had a jewelry store, we could exchange pieces of jewelry for bread, for butter, milk, and the children had food to eat. I had two brothers. My brothers were with me. We were three children.
Did you feel the racism and tension in the place you lived even before the war?
Yes. When a policeman would come by, and the policemen were taking care of the cleanliness of the streets, let's say. And if they found something on the street that's not supposed to be, they would give you a terrible fine. You had to pay a fine. They were very strict. police, and we were so afraid of a policeman. Until today, I'm afraid of a policeman. An old lady, I'm still afraid of a policeman. They didn't teach me that the policeman is here to take care of you. The policeman is the one that was punishing you. Because it was never perfect clean outside, you know. There were animals walking, pets, dogs, making dirty. So you were responsible for everything, for cleanliness. And the policemen were looking also. Now, racism felt because I was going to public school and I had to sit always with another Jewish girl. If I wanted to sit with a Christian, I had problems. They told me to go to the back, to sit in the back. For gymnastics, for instance, we were in a row. So I am not very tall, I'm small, but they used to tell me the Jewish girls go in the back.
How affected were you by the war?
In 39, I was still home, and I was still going to school. School was permitted for me, because we lived in the eastern part of Poland, which was occupied by the Russians. But the western part of Poland was occupied by the Germans. I didn't get there. I was in the Russian part. In the Russian part, I was allowed to go to school, which was with a Russian language. It was the main language. And I was pretty good in it, so I was going to school still. But in 1941, in June, the Germans occupied our territory, and this became hell. They were bombing, it was fire all over. And you couldn't live anymore there. So I and my brother, who is not alive anymore, we managed to escape. And my father helped us to go. We went out of town. We went to school, to music school, the two of us.
Where?
In Minsk, that was in Russia. We went by train, but to get to the train we had to go to another town, and we had to go by horse and carriage. It was an ordeal, but we happened to get out of town, and we went to Minsk. And in Minsk we had some relatives that let us stay for a while. And then we were at exams. It was in June 41. And it was such a big bombardment that all these houses were on fire. Everything was on fire. People were running back and forth. You didn't know where to run. And I was at that time probably, how old was I? Maybe 18.
So the Nazis came to Russia?
They came, the Nazis, the Germans came a few days later, yeah. And the trouble started. So we were running away from them. And we managed to get on a train, which was taking the wives of the Russian officers to the east, like to the eastern. Russia is a very big country, and in the east there was no war yet. So we managed to escape, and we got ourselves to Saratov. Saratov is a big town. We happened to have relative, my mother's sister lived in Saratov.
Saratov on the Volga.
On the Volga,
Yeah.
That's far away from Minsk, far away. My mother's sister didn't want us because we were Polish, from Poland, and she thought that she shouldn't let in Polish people. Because in Russia they never admitted that they have relatives in Poland. This you have to understand, the politics, when they hated the communists and they didn't want anybody who has anything to do with communism. But finally my aunt took us in and we could stay overnight. And the next day to look for a place to stay, but we couldn't find a place to stay. So we were begging her to let us live. In the meantime, my brother was taken to the army, to the Trudovой front, what do we say, a labor camp. And I was left all by myself with this family of my mother. And they kept me for a while, and then they said, you have to find work, because if you don't have work, you cannot have a card for ration, for bread ration. So I met some girls that were my age, and they were standing in line for bread. And they said, come join us, and I did. And when we were standing for bread, they said, we can take you to the factory we work, and you can work with us. They were making, not gloves, mittens for the soldiers in a factory. You have to sew them. And I went with them to the boss, and he accepted me. And I didn't know how to sew, I didn't know how to operate the machine. And they were hitting me with a stick on the back. You have to work all night. And I couldn't work, I didn't know how to sew a machine, operate the machine. But I finally learned, and I worked there for a year. I was sewing mittens for the soldiers.
So you never went to a concentration camp?
I was never in a concentration camp, no. No, my husband, Leo, was in a concentration camp. I was. But I was trying to find my way, you know, to do some work. I worked in a kolkhoz. You know what a kolkhoz is? How do you explain in English a kolkhoz? So you work in the fields.
It's a commune.
Commune, yes. What do you call a kolkhoz?
Oh, it's cooperative.
Cooperative, yeah. And we were picking cotton, we were picking grains.
So as long as you were working, you were safe.
Yeah, so I would get a portion of rice, a portion of wheat. I could make a bread from it. We lived in a kolkhoz. Kolkhoz was peasants who had little homes, little homes. They barely can live, a small family. They had to take us in, so it was no much room.
While you were there in the kolkhoz, while this was all going on, what was happening in your shtetl, in your town?
We didn't know, because my shtetl went on fire, and they put everybody in a cold synagogue, and they set on fire the synagogue with the people. But what happened exactly, I was never there. And people tell.
They gathered everybody, put them in a synagogue.
Not everybody. 1,500 went into a synagogue, 1,500 were in a different place, wherever they could, and they set them on fire and they burned them. They got rid of them. And some of them they told to dig ditches by themselves and go in and put themselves in with their face down, and they killed them, you know. So some of them were not killed really. So they walked out from under
the bodies.
Under the bodies. 5, 6 people maybe out of the thousands. And they tell the story, yeah. And some of them came to Israel and they could tell the story, how they got out from under the others. I have a pamphlet, I have a book that was written for me and they sent it to me, so but you cannot read it, can you? It would take too much, no.
What happened to the rest of your family?
My youngest brother, I had 2 brothers. My younger brother, Nachman. He was shot by the Germans. When they walked in, they took 20 young boys. He was 20 years old. And they shot them point blank, everybody, 20. Yeah, he was gone. And the other one was with me. He went into, he was in a labor camp, and then they took him to the army. And he disappeared from me, and I didn't know where he was. He was in the Soviet army for a while, and I found him after the war. So I was basically alone.
What about your parents?
My parents were killed. This is what I hear from people. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But I hear that they put them in the cold synagogue. It was a big, big synagogue in Kretz. So they put in thousands of people into the synagogue, and they poured it with gasoline and they set it on fire. And they were inside. This is what I hear, what people tell me. I didn't see it.
Do you remember any other really horrible moments that you saw?
I was spared because I was really outside, I happened to be outside. I was going to school, I was teaching, I did things that other people didn't do. But I always heard from neighbors, from friends, what happened to this and what happened to that one. So I knew that my parents were in the group. We lived in 1943, we lived in a village, it's called a village, where the houses were built. We lived in Kyrgyzstan. The houses are built out of mud. And when it was raining, the mud little houses were falling apart in the rain. And it was raining on us. We were lying in the rain. And we put plates on top, over the face and over the forehead for the water. Otherwise, we would be drowning in water. We put dishes on the top until the rain stopped. And in the morning, when you woke up, you had to build a new house from mud. You wash the floor with the waste that the cows make, put it together with water, add something to it, and make a paste that you can wash the floor with it. So things like this I saw. There were times that I was eating grass. Cook it without salt, with a little water, and say that this is spinach. Pretend that we're eating spinach. We were eating grass. Those were times. Yeah. When there was no ration of bread, they never returned the ration back to you, except they skipped a few days. You got nothing. You didn't eat a few days at all. So we were very, very hungry. But this was in 1943, I think. Only this year was very bad. Otherwise we had bread. The bread was heavy. It was like brick. So a 400 gram of bread was a little piece. So like brick, horrible taste. We never saw meat. We never saw butter. Survived.
How do you think you managed to survive when other people didn't?
Well, you were lucky. You were just lucky, because I could have not survived, just the same as the others. When a bullet was flying, it could hit me, it could have hit somebody. If it didn't hit me, it means that I was lucky. Just lucky. Sheer lucky, couldn't be smart.
When did you meet your husband after the war?
Yeah. Leon, I met in 1943, I think, 44. the war was almost to an end. He went out of a concentration camp. He was in camp, and he was very swollen. And I met him, and then we went out a little bit together, and he lost a bit of weight, and he looked like a person. We decided to get married. We had no clothes to get married, but what we were wearing the same day what we were on, we washed it in the, it wasn't a river, it was like a, what do you call it, water that goes through a stream.
Yeah.
We washed it in the stream with cold water, and he wore the same pants at night for the wedding, and I wore the same dress for the wedding. And the presents that people brought me for my wedding was, some people had an old towel from home, they gave it to me. Some people had a kerchief, they gave it to me. And some people had a can of sardines, they gave it to me. And these are my wedding gifts. And we ate bread. Everybody brought his portion of bread. Plus, some have bottles with vitamins, like a juice, vitamins that you can drink. It's sweet. So we had the bread and the vitamins. Or gefilte fish made of beets, sweet white beets, chopped and cooked, and this was fish.
Mm-hmm.
So we really didn't have food. In 43 special, it was very bad. That's about it.
Do you remember, like, the specific moment when you knew the war was over and you knew you were going to survive?
When the war was, I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I gave birth to a stillborn baby. You know what means stillborn?
Yeah, I understand.
That was dead. So this was on the 9th of May, and the 9th of May was the war was finished. So people were cheering outside that the war is finished, hooray! And I was dying. It was a very bad day for me. I survived, but I was completely pronounced almost dead. I lost a lot of blood. Yeah. And it was a boy. They gave birth to a boy.
What did you do when the war was over?
We went in a truck that took us to Austria. We went to Austria, and we went to Vienna. And Vienna had an American song, an English song, and a French song. We went to the American. And in the American, we got to Salzburg. And in Salzburg, we were placed into camps. They're called DP camps, means displaced people, camps for displaced people. And we got the room and board and food and everything, and we stayed in camp a few years. And Danny was born in that time.
How did you end up in Canada?
After camp, we decided we want to emigrate from Austria. So we found a friend, I don't know if you know, my friend Bluma, that lived in Canada. And I wrote a letter to her. Could she help me to come to Canada? They had to sponsor me. And she did. And she sponsored me, and I came to Canada. By boat. General Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Hershey is called. H-E-R, Hershey.
When you got to Canada, was it hard to start your life over again?
Of course, we had a child, we had a baby. David was 1.5 years old. We had to live, we had to have a room and board. So we rented a room. I think we got some help from the government, from the Jayas, I think, from the Jewish, Jayas is Jewish Immigration Aids or something. They helped us in the beginning to pay rent. And we had to look for work to make a living, to eat something. So Daddy found a job as He's an engineer by profession, so he got a job with Canada Air. And they paid him, and he could buy food for the beginning. He made close to $100 a week. So this was enough for us to eat and to keep the baby intact, And then slowly I found a job. In 52, I got a job as a teacher. And the two worked. It was enough to provide for the family.
How did you tell your son about what happened to you and about your experiences?
How did I told him what I'm telling you.
Yeah, but was it hard to tell him?
Yes.
Did he understand?
He was a baby. He was very young. Now he understands.
Yeah. Who would you say was your role model in life?
I didn't have a mother. I didn't have a father who could keep me going.
Have you ever spoken to other people about these stories?
Of course, everybody tells his stories. Some went through other things that I didn't. And I went through things that they don't know. And they learn to tell each other.
Do you find it's hard to talk about it?
Yes.
How do you feel now talking to your granddaughter about this?
I hope it's going to be a legacy for the future for many people to know what happened to us, and it should never happen again. We don't want our grandchildren to suffer as much as we did.
Yeah.
I hope it will never happen again. We're not going to see Hitler anymore.
I hope not. Thanks, Grandma.